Okay, I need your help with this. This is not a CreepyPasta. This is a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and this is the creepiest shit that's ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room, starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his own old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in decades. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a very shoddy copy of Super Smash Brothers, and well, beggars can't be choosers, needless to say. It didn't take long before I became really bored of beating up level 9 computes. That week I decided to drive around the neighbourhood about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, fuck yeah, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the neighbourhood when one last house caught my eye. I still have no idea why I did. There were no cars, and there were only one table sat with some random junk on it, but something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of the car. I was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you ask me to tell you why, then I thought he was displeasing. I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there were no other people within shouting distance, I would not have approached the man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked me what I was looking for, and immediately I noticed that he must have been blind in one eye. His right eye had that gazed look over it. I forced myself to look in his left eye, trying not to offend. I asked him if he had any old video games. I already wondered how I could politely excuse myself in the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was, but to my surprise, he said he'd found some in an old box. He assured me he'd be back in a jiffy and turned his head into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help notice that what he was selling on the table. Littered across the table were rather peculiar paintings. Various artworks that looked like ink blobs that psychiatrists might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It was obvious why no one was visiting the guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly the best pleasing paintings. As I came to the last one, for some reason it almost looked like Majora's Mask. The same heart-shaped body with the spikes protruding outwards. Instantly I thought I was secretly hoping to find that game at one of these garage sales. Some bullshit was projecting itself onto the ink blocks, but given it was the events that happened afterwards, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I asked the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I admit, I jumped out of reflex and I laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was a standard grey colour, except someone had written Majora on the back in permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach, realising what a coincidence this was. I asked him how much he wanted for it. He smiled. The old man smiled at me and said I could have it for free. That used to belong to a kid who was about my age. He didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the old man phrased that, but I didn't really pay attention then. I was too caught up with not only finding the game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptic here, since it looked looked like a pretty shady copy, and there was no guarantee that it would work. But then the optimist inside of me interjected that maybe it was just some kind of beta version or pirated copy, and that all it needed was, and that was all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man, and the man smiled at me, wishing me well, saying, "Goodbye then." At least that's what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had nagging doubt that the man said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it worked just fine. And there was one save file said, "Ben." "Goodbye, Ben." He was saying, "Goodbye, Ben." Felt bad for the old man. Obviously a grandparent and obviously going senile, and I, for some reason, reminded him of his grandson Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file, eyeballing it. I could tell he was pretty far in the game. He almost had all of the masks. 3 out of 4 remains of bosses. I noticed that he used an owl statue to save his game and was on day 3 up by the stone tower temple with hardly an hour left to go before the moon crashes. I remembered thinking that it was such a shame that he had come so close to beating the game, but he never got to finish. I made a new file named Link out of tradition and started the game, ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady looking copy, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally, just like a retail copy of the game, save, except from a few hiccups now and then, like textures being where it should, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, there was one thing that was a little unnerving. That it was at times that NPCs would call me Link, but at other times they would call me Ben. I figured it was just a bug, a fluke in the programming that caused our files to somehow get mixed up. It did kind of creep me out though, and after a while, it was around I had beaten the Woodfall Temple, I regrettably went on the save files and deleted Ben. I had the intention to preserve the file out of respect of the game's original owner. It's not like I would need 2 files anyway, hoping that would solve the problem. It did, and it didn't. Now the NPCs wouldn't call me anything, where my name should be in the dialogue. It just had a blank space. My save name was still called Link though. Frustrated and with homework to do, I put the game down for a day. I started playing the game again last night, getting the lens of truth and working my way through towards completing this Snowhead Temple. Now, some of you hardcore Majora's Mask fans know about the 4th day glitch. For those who don't know, you can Google it, but it's just of it's right as the clock is about to hit 000 on the final day. You talk to an astronomer and look through the telescope. If you time it right, the countdown disappears and you instantly have another day to finish what you were doing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish the Snowhead Temple, I happened to get it right on the first try, and the time counter at the bottom disappeared. However, when I pressed B to exit the telescope, instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora's boss fight room at the end of the game, the trippy box in area, staring at the Skull Kid hovering above me. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above me, and the background music was the regular area, but still creepy. Immediately my palms started to sweat. This was definitely not normal. The Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried to move around the area, no matter where I went, the Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen though, and this kept up for around 60 seconds. I thought the game had a bug or something. but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when a text appeared on my screen. You're not sure why, but you've apparently had a reservation. I instantly recognized the text. You get that when you're in the room, when you get the room key from Aju in the stockpot inn. But why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate me with some way. I started to navigate the room again, testing to see if it was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something here. And then I realised how stupid I was. To even think that I could reprogram a game like this, that was absurd. Sure, enough 15 seconds later, another message appeared on this screen. And again, like the first one, already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss? Yes or no? I paused for a second. Contemplating what I should press and how the game would react. I realised I couldn't select no. Taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white, with the words "Dawn of a New Day" with the subtext I beneath it. Where I was ported to filled me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear I'd ever experienced. The only way I can describe it, the way I felt like it was having an inexplicable depression on a profound scale. I'm not normally a depressed person, but the way I felt here was a feeling I didn't even know existed. It was such a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clock Tower. I walked out the Clock Tower, as you do normally when you start from the first day, only to find that all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the 4th day glitch, you can still find the guard and the dog that runs around outside the Clock Tower. This time, they were all gone. What replaced them was the ominous feeling that there was something out there, in the same area as me, and it was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name, and the hero's bow, but at this point, I wasn't even considered for my avatar. I felt that I was personally in some kind of danger. Perhaps the more chilling thing was the music. It was a song of healing, ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. The music would get louder, building up if you would expect something to pop out at you, but nothing ever did. The constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then I would hear the faint laughter of the happy salesman in the background, just quiet enough so I wasn't sure if I was hearing things, but just loud enough to keep me determined to find him. I looked in all the 4 zones of the Clock Tower, only to find nothing, no one. Textures were missing. West Clock Tower had me walking on air. The entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken, as the reverse healing song repeated for somewhat, must have been about the 15th time. I just started to remember standing in the middle of South Clock Tower, realising that I had never felt so alone in a video game. As I walked through the ghost town, I didn't know whether it was the combinations of the out-of-place textures and the atmosphere and the haunting melody of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted, but I was literally on the verge of tears. I have no idea why. I hardly ever cry. Something had gripped me here, and this powerful sense of depression that was both foreign and crippling. I tried leaving the clock tower, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black and it would just not let me leave. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape, but I did not want to be here. But every time I played the Song of Time or the Song of Soaring, it would say, "Your voice notes echo so far," but nothing happens. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't want me to leave, but I had no idea why. It was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I would feel so too vulnerable to whatever was in there. I was terrified. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself at the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else and leave this place. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, and that is when it happened, Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the happy salesman smiling at me. Not Link, me, with the Skulls Kids scream playing in the background. And when the screen returned, I was standing at the Link statue from playing the song Entity of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing just stared back at me with that haunting expression. I turned around and ran back to the South Clock Tower, and to my horror, the fucking statue followed me on the way. I can't compare this to the weeping angel from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of that statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to fucking say it, haunting me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics, but not even once did the thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why. I was so wrapped up in it. The terror felt so real. I started to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right in front of me the next time. Link began to make weird animations I had never even seen him do before. He would flail his arms around or spasm randomly, and the screen would cut to the happy mask salesman smiling again for a brief moment before I was face to face with a fucking statue again. I ended up running into the Swordsmaster Dojo and run back. I don't even know why, but I was in my panic. I just wanted some kind of assurance that I was not alone here. To my dismay, I found no one, but I returned to leave the statue conquered me in the cubby black and in the back. I tried attacking the statue with my sword, but it had no avail. Confused and back to a corner, I just stared at the statue, waiting for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again to the happy sales mask, and Link turned to face my screen, standing upright, mirroring the statue, looking at me. Along with his copy. Suddenly, it was literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered while I ran out of the dojo terrified. Suddenly, the game warped me into an underground tunnel, and the reverse song of healing queued up again, as I was given a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing behind me again, this time aggressively. I could take the few steps before it would summon behind me again. I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in the southern clock town. As I ran aimlessly, in sheer panic, suddenly a reed screamed, and the scream faded to black as dawn of a new day, and I appeared again. And I picked up the ground, levitated on my back. Then Link screamed as he burst out into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I've never seen that move used by anyone in the game, and Skull Kid himself didn't have any moves. As the death scene played, My lifeless body still burning. The Skull Kid laughed, and the screen faded to black, only to have reappeared in the same place again. I decided to charge at him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by an unknown force, and he immediately burst into flames, again killing him. This time, during the death scene, the faint sound of the reverse healing song could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed that there were no music playing this time. That all there was an eerie silence. I remember that in the original encounter with Skull Kid, you were supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time or summon the giants. I played the Song of Time, and before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again horrifically exploded into flames, and he died. As the death scene neared its ending, it began to chug as if the cartridge was trying to process a lot of something. When the screen came to, it was the same scene the first 3 times, except Link was lying on the ground, dead in a position I had never seen in the game before. His head tilted forward to the camera with Skull Kid floating over him. I couldn't move. I couldn't press any buttons. All I could do was just stare at Link's body. After about 30 seconds, the game simply faded out with a message. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Before kicking you out to the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen, starting it again, I noticed my save files are no longer there. Instead of Link, it was placed with your turn. Your turn had 3 hearts, no masks, no items. I selected your turn, and immediately when I returned to the clock tower rooftop scene of my dead Link and the Skull Kid hover over me, Skull Kid's laugh looped again and again. I quickly hit the reset button, and when the game booted up again, there was one more file added below your turn entitled Ben. Ben's save file is back where it was before. I deleted it at the Stone Tower Temple with the moon almost crashing. At this point, I turned off the game. I'm not superstitious, but this is way too fucked up even for me. I haven't played it at all today. Hell, I didn't even get sleep last night. I kept hearing the reverse Song of Healing music in my head and just remembering the sense of dread as I explored the clock tower. I drove back to the old man's house today, asking him some questions with a buddy of mine. No way I was going there alone, only to find that the for sale sign in the front yard. And when I rang the door, no one was home. So now I'm back here writing this down in my head, recording what happened. Sorry this has some grammatical errors and whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here. I'm terrified of this game, and what's so more so, now I am reviled in a second time writing this all down, but I feel like there is still more that meets the eye, and that something is calling me to investigate further. I think Ben is something in the equation, but I don't know what. And if I could only get a hold of the old man, then it would make the perfect sense and would give me some answers. I need another day or so to create before tackling the game again. It's already taking a toll on my sanity here. But next time I do this, I'm going to record my footage all the way. The idea of record only came towards me at the end, so you see this last minutes of what I saw, including the Skull Kid and Edge T statue, but it's on YouTube here. I'm going to stay in this thread for a little while longer. Before I fall asleep, to answer any of the questions you guys might have, or hopefully listen to your ideas or theories, help me shed some light on this thing. Or maybe things I should try to do. I think I'm going to play Ben's file tomorrow and see what happens. Maybe I'm supposed to do that all along. I don't believe in paranormal shit, but this is a little fucked up. But maybe this Ben guy is just a really good hacker or programmer. I don't want to think about alternatives if he isn't. That's the end of the CreepyPasta. I'm hoping that this is some kind of running gag that the developers had, and that other people have gotten the gag or hacked copies of the game. This just really scares me.